This lesson is an introduction to information processing in R, specifically how we take data from external tabular representations, either from relational databases or tree structures from XML, or flat files like CSV, and then perform further processing in R. Now, it's important to know right away that this is not an introduction to data science, data analytics, or any type of predictive models, machine learning, or data mining. It is simply an introduction to the R language and the R analysis environment for the purpose of demonstrating how the various components such as relational databases, XML, Excel, spreadsheets, and so on all fit together, and how you often use languages like R to expand upon the capabilities of those other tools. Of course, before we can dive into R itself, we need to first figure out how to get R and how to install it. And there's actually two parts to this. There are two tools. There is base R, which is a console/scripting environment for the R language. That's often used for doing very simple ad hoc type processing, although more commonly today we use RStudio, which is a local desktop integrated development environment, kind of like Eclipse or Visual Studio, that can be used to build R projects and also take advantage of more advanced editing environments and code structuring environments like R notebooks and R Markdown. Rather than installing a local desktop version for Mac, Linux, or Windows, one can also take advantage of rstudio.cloud, which is a cloud version of RStudio provided by RStudio Labs. All three of the environments are available for free from either the R community, which is an open source base for R, and then RStudio and RStudio.cloud are produced by RStudio, a company based in Boston, and those are also all available for free, although the company does offer commercial versions of their tools, and they provide maintenance and support of those tools for extra cost for companies that use R for commercial work. There are also commercial versions of R, such as Microsoft R, the Microsoft R server environment, but we're going to restrict ourselves to base R, and we're actually going to work with an RStudio.cloud. Now, to use RStudio Cloud, you simply go to rstudio.cloud and you create yourself an account. I've done that here already. I have an account on rstudio.cloud. And I've previously created a couple of different projects. Initially, you end up at the project screen, and at that point in time, you can, of course, create a new project. There's some other options you have. You can also grab a project from Git, a Git repo, if you want to work on projects with others. However, I ended up creating a new project. You may want to do the same thing. I'm going to keep on working within one of the projects already created, and I'm going to work in this particular case with an IS2000 lab, a project environment I previously created. Now, it takes a little while to launch rstudio.cloud within a project. Give it a little bit of time. It may take some a minute or so to start up within a virtual machine at rstudio.cloud. But once you're there, you can create new programs. You can either run them as an R script, which is what I have here. You basically just type in R commands, and you can see what the output is. Commands like head empty cars. Again, we're going to take a look at what those things mean in a little bit. But the point is that you can basically just try different things out. So this is very useful if you are trying to see how something's working, or you just want to, do some little bit of ad hoc work. Now, generally, I don't recommend you do that. I recommend that you do most of your work within an R notebook. Now, the other thing you may notice here is that there is other things you can do as well. You can also create R Markdown, which are more elaborate documents that allow you to intersperse comments for formatting and various metadata within R. It's actually an XML language. You can create a Shiny web app using the Shiny framework within R for creating web applications for analytics. And then you can also do C++, plain text files for things like XML or CSV file creation. You can do Python. You can write SQL scripts. D3, for example, for doing visualizations. You can also create presentations within RStudio that uses R Markdown to create live presentations. It's actually kind of neat because you can place R code onto a slide, and every time you display the slide, the R code actually runs, which is really neat for making sure you always get the latest updates. And you can also do some HTML work and build HTML pages that contain live R. But we're going to restrict ourselves for the moment to R Markdown. So you create a new R Markdown document, give it a name, and then you can also choose what kind of an output you want for that. So R Markdown actually allows you to eventually produce a report or sort of the results of the program running without the R code actually there. And you can have that be either HTML, PDF, or Word. So kind of think about who you want to distribute this to. If you want to give somebody HTML, of course that's what you're going to do, or PDF if you want to send somebody a PDF report. Depending on what our assignments eventually ask for, just pick the right one or eventually change it. So I'm going to just stick to HTML, give it a title. I'm just going to do a title that's a little bit of a play environment. So we can go show you a few things. And what will happen then is it'll create the R Markdown notebook. Of course, a lot of stuff you actually don't need. None of this stuff is really needed except the first part here. Everything after line 12 you can actually delete. But it's there because it gives you an introduction to that. It's actually very helpful to read this webpage here, rmarkdown.rstudio.com, because it shows you the different Markdown commands you can inject for controlling the output of your ultimate report that you get when you what's called knit the document. Now, once you're within RStudio, you do most within an R Markdown file or an R notebook, you organize your code into what's called chunks. Each chunk should be a particular step in the processing of your information. So I'm just going to go and actually delete a lot of this stuff because we don't need this. And I'm going to show you how to create a chunk. So you go up here and you say insert R, and that will give you a chunk. And you notice that it's inside these formatting characters, and you can put something in here. I'm just going to put a command in here so you can see. It doesn't really matter what the command does right now. And then you can run the selected line, or you can run the entire chunk if it consists of multiple lines. We'll run the entire chunk. And you'll see the output right here. It's actually right within it. So when you eventually knit it, you will actually see the output as part of your knitted file. That allows you to kind of distribute your information analysis results to someone. Of course, you can insert additional chunks. Line 16 here. You can also, if you scroll this up over here, you can see the actual command being run. So you can actually down here run additional commands that you can try things out without actually making them part of your notebook. So sometimes it is helpful to just kind of try a few things ad hoc on the scripting line, on the command line, on the console, before you put them into another chunk. Now, typically you organize it so that the first chunk contains all of what we call your libraries or packages, and then further down you run your various analysis steps. But the point is basically that you organize your code into logical units, and the units are called chunks. Now, the other part that's important is this area over here where you can see plots that you're producing, your visualizations. You can see the files that I actually have. So eventually when we need to process files like CSV files, or we'll have our SQL database files, or we have maybe XML files. We have to upload them into that area. Think of that as a remote drive like Google Drive or OneDrive. And you simply hit the upload button to be able to upload a local file into your RStudio Cloud file system. So this is not what's on your local computer. This is actually at some server somewhere at RStudio's location. I would presume in Boston or in some other virtual location. Of course, you can also delete files. The other thing that's neat is that you can actually take a look to see where you are here. And this is the part that sounds a little bit tricky to kind of know where your path is. So later on, we're going to see a bit more about this. Now you can also see the packages that you have installed. This is actually all the packages that are available, and the one with the check mark are the ones I have currently installed on my system. Now we'll talk in a few minutes more about packages and what it means to install packages versus load them for a particular session, but we'll get into that in a bit. Up here in your environment, you also have interesting information that allows you to kind of navigate to see what variables you have, what packages you've loaded, what command history you have executed, what connections you may have to remote databases, remote sites, and so on. But at this point in time, that's something that we're not going to use. And eventually, of course, you can knit over here to HTML, maybe to PDF, or to Word, so you can distribute your code in a readable format. Of course, you can also save your code. Your code is certainly saved right here. You have it, or you can go click on File, Save As. You can save it that way as well. You can save it to a particular path. All right. So right now, if you look over here, it's untitled. So I want to save it. It's going to ask me the first time what I want to save it as. I'm not going to give it an extension. It should pick an extension automatically of .rmd. Whoops, that was not very smart. I should rename that. Alright, so now it's labeled IS2000 sandbox.rmd. Alright, so first time around you have to save it. Then of course it's there. You can always just load other ones as well. So I can just click on that. It's going to load it. There's nothing in there, but it just shows you what it is. So for the moment, that's it. We're going to go take a look next at how we actually run various analytics commands within R and get access to things like CSV files, databases, and XML.